I would like to welcome and thank our panelists, Mr. Michel Sawaya, who's the CEO of Citibank Lebanon, Mr. Ramiz Shahade, who's the CEO of Facebook for the MENA region, and Mr. David Sifri, who's the Asia Nomura Institutional Equity Business Sales and Strategy Head. I want to thank them for putting the effort and time to help make this call as insightful as possible. So hopefully all of you find this panel discussion as helpful and as insightful as we want it to be in the first place. Second, I would like to thank Life and more specifically Mr. David Dawood and the Life Hong Kong chapter for organizing this call to try and highlight the assets that we have to raise awareness on the current opportunities that lie ahead of our country, even during these dire times. I just want to start by stating that the purpose of this call is not to appeal to our patriotism or love for the country. I think just taking the time and joining the call and having the interest to engage in such a conversation in the first place is proof enough. Also, we are not trying to raise capital or trying to funnel our efforts to send money back home in support of the various causes. I am sure that everyone have done their part by sending their generous donations, especially after the Beirut port explosion. So this is something that we did, we are doing, and we will continue to do as we move forward. But the purpose of this call is to identify the challenges that lie ahead of us and the opportunities and assets that we can leverage to create commercial and economical value for our country, regardless of the industry that we want to look at. So first, we will look at the general status update in terms of the situation in Lebanon, the economic and financial situation, what led us to be in this position in the first place, and what is our path to rebound from this collapse. Second, we will dive deeper into the opportunities that are present at the moment, leveraging our current assets and enabling economic growth to the investors, to the international and local companies, and to the local communities. And third, and if we have time, of course, I would like to ask the panelists on their opinion and if they can share with us their insights regarding the Beirut port and how we can rebuild such a critical and vital element of our economy. So also before I start, if anyone has a specific question, please drop the question in the Q&A message box and we will try to answer your questions as much as possible. Without further ado, let's get to it. So Michel, I would like to start with you. Having spent almost 26 years now in Citibank Lebanon, I'm sure that you have been through the ups and the downs. You've been part of the good times as well as the bad times, unfortunately. So it would be great if you can please share with us what are you seeing on the ground as a general status update on the current situation, the economic and financial crisis that we're going through, what caused this, and what are our options to have a path out of this collapse?
Hi, everyone. Hi, Michel. Hi, panelists. Thank you very much for this event and this opportunity for me to speak. Basically, I've seen Lebanon go through many various ups and downs, like you said, Michel. We've had actually some periods of significant growth, and I would like to mention the 2008, 2011, where the country almost was the only one of the few countries in the world that was actually growing at around an 8% average GDP growth compared to a whole global economy that was in a very severe crisis. So I'm using this as an example to tell you that we can have potential booms that are very positive should we decide to do that. But what we have seen over the last 25 years is simply a build-up of weak or inefficient government structure that was built really on a very sectarian, appeasing framework that actually got all the old players continuously in the game, which actually did not develop into a format of governance that is proper, that will support long-term growth through employment, through productive industries, and actually relied on a growing banking sector that relied primarily on inflows and remittances that supported over a very long period of time financing the growing debt of the country. And you see specifically in the last 8-9 years, since 2011, when the GDP growth did not actually see any material upside. It was growing between 0 and 2%. For an emerging market country, that's a very bad depression. Despite that, the GDP has gone, the deficit has gone up from around 50 billion to around 95 billion, almost doubling in the last 10 years. So it tells you how the framework of governance was not there at all. Michelle, mute.
Yes, sorry. Thank you very much for this a quick summary on the current situation in Lebanon. I was hoping also to get some insights on what is our path forward, how we can get out of this collapse, and what are the current opportunities that we have, or options that we have, if I may say, to regain development, regain growth.
Look, this is a $1 million question, actually. What we've seen is since the demonstration started in October 2019, is short-term decisions that were reactive, that were not planned, especially when it comes to the immediate default on all sovereign Eurobond sovereign debt, current and future, plus interest, the subsidy of fuel wheat and pharmaceutical products, and then followed by food products, which is an unplanned depletion of our reserves. So these two actions. Thirdly, the delay and repeated delay in approaching the IMF. And I think that major solution that the country should have is driven by two things: political decision and an IMF program that is immediate today rather than tomorrow. So this is, if you want to get out of a crisis, and we've seen it in many countries, the IMF has a playbook. It may not appease everyone, but it is a playbook which they follow that is catered to each country. And Lebanon has the resources that it can use and the wealth outside Lebanon, but also inside Lebanon through assets. And you said port, just privatizing the port, getting it into a modern, efficient, revenue-generating port, whether it's Beirut or Tripoli or anywhere else. These are just the beginning of some of the opportunities we can talk about.
Thank you, Michel. This was very insightful. Ramez, I would like to move to you. As Michel said, the opportunities that lie ahead of us are probably, if you would like to say, they are dependent on some of things happening, but other opportunities are more immediate. And I know that you have been part of several initiatives across the cluster, not only Lebanon, regarding digital economies or just connecting to the broader market globally, which is enabled by technology. If you can share with us your insights on what are the current assets that we have in Lebanon that we can leverage at the present moment in order to just start building those growth back again.
Thanks, Michel, for that question. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the live members from wherever you may be dialing in. Look, let me make it patently clear that history has taught us that politics and economics are inversely correlated. And as such, you know, I think as a society, as a nation, as a community, as a people, as a region, we have both sets of examples. I think part of the way forward is for people to bet a little bit more on economics, unless they are prone to succumbing to the sunk cost fallacy of politics. it hasn't gotten us anywhere. I'm not sure how much more people can continue to do that, but that's their choice. I'm hoping that more and more will bank on economics. And so it's a call to action to the private sector to, to seek out opportunities that are meaningful and lucrative to them, either from a developmental standpoint or an investment standpoint, for their own commercial viability. Lebanon, like the rest of the region, is dominated by a massive small and medium enterprise footprint. The percentage of companies, entities that are plugged into any semblance of a digital economy is abysmally small, which in fact is a great opportunity. When you think about the financial crises or some of the regulatory challenges that prevail, they very much exist, not exclusively exist, but they very much exist in the physical world. And when you have an audience and a constituency that you can engage with outside of your physical catchment, and you can trade with them, buy from them, exchange with them, transact with them, it unlocks perhaps some of the hurdles being faced from a financial flow perspective that Michel had highlighted. So our mission in Facebook and the various platforms that I have in this part of the world, so Instagram and WhatsApp, Messenger, so on and so forth, is really about helping institutions and businesses plug into a digital consumer base, a bigger audience, and that if that bet is embraced, that they can gain a greater set of interactions and greater financial flow that is not bound by the physical radius that perhaps they previously have had to deal with. So we have many programs, from grants to give people sort of legs to stand on, to add credits so that they can reach and be known to different audiences in different places. There's support programs around connectivity, around payments, around digital marketing tools and onboarding into the sort of the social commerce and the conversational commerce, or now what we call the discovery commerce space, where you don't have to find consumers, your products find consumers. And then there's a whole aspect around training on e-commerce, providing logistics and warehousing and payment gateways, إلى آخره. And then obviously, in order to kind of be very relevant to consumers, to train them on digital presence, on creating assets online, so on and so forth. So there are many different programs. We have stood up a program for Lebanon. There are many other entities that are leaning in, from the International Chamber of Commerce to UN ESQA, to a myriad of consulting firms, to logistics firms, and a whole bunch of service providers. So long-winded answer to say, bet on economics. There is a way forward for these businesses. There is specialized production and artistry and value in Lebanon that is in demand outside of Lebanon. And in my view, it's absolutely worth the investment in.
And that's where we're speaking at the moment now, currently.
Yes.
Okay, that's great, Ramiz. David, what Ramiz was talking about, I think, is, if you want to call it, like a business model change for Lebanon, which, as Michel also said before, was heavily reliant on the financial industry and was also reliant on the leisure, travel, and hotels, people coming in, and inflows from the diaspora. So can you please just talk about some of the obstacles that we are currently facing in Lebanon which will, if you want, hinder or impede our ability to actually not only capitalize on the opportunities that Ramiz was talking about, but also make them a sustainable flow of revenues for our economy and a sustainable source of development and growth for Lebanon.
Sure. Thank you for that introduction, first of all, Michelle, and thanks a lot for the panelists and, of course, to Life for the invite. And I just want to build on what the other two panelists actually said. I mean, very relevant stuff. And to answer your question, basically, the way that I see it is that, yes, we can diversify away from the traditional forms of tourism and the traditional, avenues of revenue that the country used to get, which was from, expatriates repatriating money back to Lebanon, and try to get to a level where we are self-sustainable. The thing is that I think we need to embrace a lot of the reforms that the other two panelists just referred to, and to some degree, we cannot forget the financial aspect of this whole thing, because the freezing up of the banking sector is a crucial thing. In order for us to be able to move forward, we cannot have a frozen banking sector. If you want to have a modern day sort of, like e-commerce center in Lebanon that's being able to produce at home and being able to export abroad, or if you want to have services that are being able to export abroad, you can't look at Lebanon as being a frozen country that cannot accept payments from outside or is a dollarized economy. It's got to be a little bit more self-sustainable. And the thing is that that's the biggest thing that I think that's impeding the, that's the initial thing that needs to just sort of move away from. And, the other panelists sort of referred to it, is that, you're looking at IMF help, you're looking at, other forms of help, like from other terrestrial economies and stuff like that. And yes, we have to consider all of these options. And the problem is that, we are a highly politicized economy. So separating politics from economics is, as, Ramiz said, is sometimes is opposite. But the thing is that it's something that we have to deal with, and we have to tread very, very lightly, because we are not a military economy. We don't have the level of competence internally to be able to defend ourselves. We are highly sort of influenced by the regional powers at bay, and so. And it's not just political, it's also economical. For example, the brain drain that's been happening from Lebanon into other regional economies has been happening for a long time. And so being able to get those people back to come home is going to be a very big challenge. And, while these guys go serve abroad, they're also sort of servicing an external factor. And so, your local politics is no longer local, it's international, or it's regional, I should say. And, that's something that I think that we're going to be struggling with a lot. And having said that, Lebanon is only a place of what, 4.5 million people. And then we have 1 million Syrian refugees. And then we have Palestinian refugees. And then we have so many external benefactors coming in. We've got the United Nations. We've got, other political influences that are playing at bay. I don't need to explain to everybody in this audience exactly how many people are involved in the Lebanese politics. But if you want to go back to economics, I do think that the way forward is digital. And I do think going forward is focus on economics, which is what Ramiz actually focused on. However, I think also that we need to at least resolve the whole issue of the financial system. If we don't resolve that, then you can't have anything else. You can't have a payment system. You can't have, a lending system. Small businesses can't get a loan. That's a basic crux of the whole problem. And I think that can be easily resolved if we just get some basic things out of the way.
Okay, thank you, David. Interestingly, Michelle, going back to you, I believe Citi is the only international bank currently in the Lebanese market. As an international bank, and Ramez as well, as an international company, David said a very interesting point regarding shared service centers, or bringing some sort of shared services in Lebanon. Michelle, please, for you first. What do you think are the main factors that any international business would look at before deciding to even consider moving back to Lebanon or opening a shared service center in Lebanon?
Absolutely. Look, just to add to what my colleagues have said in terms of the, first of all, the banking system, what David referred to. And there's one question that I got in terms of how do people gain trust of the banking system. Look, this would be a complex process. Now, the confidence in the whole banking system has deteriorated to a level that no one wants to have any relationship with a bank in Lebanon, and that any money that you can get out in any whatever way, you're going to do it. So this is a period when you have, like I said before, when you get an IMF program to stabilize this, the GDP situation, the currency situation, you have today 3 currencies that are applied to foreign exchange in Lebanon. You have to have a unified currency. You need to have a proper governance structure for procurement, for whistleblowing, for raising corruption charges, etc. So once you have that framework, the banking system can automatically restructure itself. It would become a solution as part of the solution overall. But just to answer your question in terms of how shared service centers, it doesn't have to get to a shared service center, first of all. There are, and Ramiz would probably know more than me, there are so many resources today. Although we've had some loss of brains to the region and to Europe and to the US over the years, but there are today, I see a lot of these people from universities, American University of Beirut, LAU, ASG, or others that have so much capability, so much energy and drive, right? We have so much to give as a country, as a young population, as a multilingual population. And let me tell you some in my mind of the factors that companies may look at. First of all, cost. Lebanon at some point got to a very expensive level of living standards because of the currency peg. When you have a currency peg at 1,500 for 25 years, right, and wage increase continues to go up, our wages got to a level that's equivalent to Western Europe, the US, or the Gulf. That was unsustainable for a country that actually did not produce much. And as I said, was driven by a financial sector. Secondly, I'm not saying we should replace a financial sector or replace tourism or replace remittance of money. Not at all, by any means, no. In fact, we need all these. But what we can do is benefit from this cost readjustment today. Today, the kind of practical devaluation of currency is 2.5 times. So that has adjusted itself. What you need other than that, other than cost and cost of rent, there's ample available space. So rent has gone down, salaries have gone down, cost of doing business have gone down. Whether it's infrastructure, etc., cost has gone down naturally. Secondly, I would look at another factor is infrastructure. This is something we have to work on. I'm not saying it's a deal breaker, because when you hire a freelance or a support or a company that's working, you don't need continuous access to infrastructure, but you need infrastructure. So you can't undermine the importance of telecom, of energy, and of internet. Thirdly, what I would look at is stability. Lebanon has had a long level of, let's say, safety and security at the personal level in the cities. And we've never faced, as Lebanese, any risk of personal safety. I think we feel it in some big cities much more than we feel it now. We don't want to get into a situation where you have worry about your personal safety, but stability overall, whether it's political and it's inversely proportional, like you said, Ramis, I agree. But some level of political stability is key. So these are three things. You have ample education, language, talent in the country, and that is actually a very strong plus for us compared to the countries around us. We can't compare ourselves to the US, to Europe, etc. We compare ourselves to the region in which we operate, and we have that strength. So this is number 4. Sorry, I'm talking. I'm a long-winded answer, but just to cover the areas that I believe are relevant to a decision-making process. Quality of life, that's important. Labor laws. We have decent laws in the country, regardless of what we think. We need to implement these laws. We need a judicial system that's functioning rather than implementation, rather than creating new laws. Of course, I'm not undermining that. We need to get updated laws, but rule of law needs to exist with a strong judicial system, and that's something we have to work on. Time zone. Actually, time zone, we are actually now, in this call today, we're capturing the US East Coast, and we're capturing Asia Pacific, which is something that's actually a cost factor. And then you have other things like ease of doing business, corruption, etc. So these are the factors. I think we have strong points. We have points we need to work on, but we can head there regardless of the overall political environment. I'll defer some of this answer to Ramis as well. Please help me on this if I missed something.
I think you covered it entirely. The only thing I would compliment to what you said, Michel, is as an entrepreneur or as a business person or as an investor, if you're, there can be a lot of if statements in terms of engaging, like, if the infrastructure is there, and if the banking system is set up, and if, and then you say, well, I'll wait because there's too many if statements. I would encourage people to look at it a bit differently and say, what can I do in the absence of these things? And I think you start to discover that there are a number of things, and you had highlighted them, I think, embedded in your question or around David's comment around shared services or these types of things, is that doesn't need to be so formalized. There are, in the digital economy, it matters less where you live. It matters less your physical location. You're plugging into a system that is beyond borders. And so what the assets that we have are a bright, educated, tenacious, young population. Okay. We have artisans and artists and fashion designers that produce amazing things. We've got language assets and time zone assets. And so as an entrepreneur, you start to say to them, how do I package these things and leverage these things and avail these things to be in service of others? So, in the digital world, there's need for customer care capability. There's need for audit capability, online qualification of content, and a myriad of things. And then, how do you take someone in, I don't know, Lean making some really cool, art and make it available to some person in Antibes? And these things don't need the full extent of stability that we would all love to enjoy one day in Lebanon. And so all of this is to say, we don't have to wait. There are already things that can be done.
I would just want to add on to that point. I totally agree. There are things that we can definitely do right now, which to a large degree, I think, Lebanon has, in its history, been entrepreneurial and been strong enough to be able to actually do. And so there's so many things that actually Lebanon can do in terms of being able to get digitally connected, which is what Ramez has referred to. And, with regards to Michel talking about, just the financial prospects of Lebanon and how we can also just sort of capitalize not only on the benefits that we had in the past, and not just rely on those, but also just capitalize on the prospects of what Ramez is talking about with regards to the the digital economy and getting small businesses connected. I just want to add one thing though. I feel like, yes, we have those things that we can do, and services is a side of the business that I think does not necessarily revolve around those issues that hamper us at the moment, which include security, infrastructure, things like that. I think if you're trying to produce a product in Lebanon and you're trying to connect digitally to a global marketplace, like let's say Facebook, or like let's say Alibaba, or Amazon, or whatever it is, you need an infrastructure in order for you to be able to deliver your product. At the moment, we don't have that. The port is totally destroyed. You've got maybe the port in Tripoli, which can maybe function. However, there's a lot of issues with regards to government intervention. You've got taxes, you've got other issues with regards to, bribing and things like that. And those are issues that need to be addressed. Now, if you take those issues out, we have a huge amount of potential. There's so many different things, so many different businesses that are ready there, that are ready to get connected, that don't even know how to. And I'm just also sort of looking at it from the Asia Pacific perspective, because that's where I operate. And so when I look at, for example, operations like Lazada, or like Alibaba, or like Taobao, or like these digital marketplaces, or as Ramez knows, Facebook Marketplace, and these places are very vibrant economies, and these things would not be able to exist without a logistical network, or at least the ability to be able to deliver a product that somebody would want. For a country like Lebanon, where you have small businesses that are producing olives or olive oil or za'atar, or that's just the basic stuff. But I mean, like going even further than that, where you have like artisans, and you have musicians, you have poets, you have people that are able to produce things that are transcending the actual physical product. It's a very wide array of network. It's a wide network of stuff that you can actually look at. And so Lazada, for example, has been successful because it's had a backer. It's had a financial backer from Alibaba. Alibaba came about because it had, it had scale. It had the ability to, it had financial backing, and had also, it had infrastructure.
David, look, I mean, if, to be fair, logistics hasn't stopped in Lebanon. There's still the transfer of goods in and out of the country. Yes, it's impacted. Yes, it's impeded, but it's still happening. A lot, we all know, we all saw how much humanitarian aid came into the country on the back of the crisis, like physical humanitarian aid. And products are still coming in. The supermarket shelves are not yet empty, and hopefully they don't get completely empty. And so and retailers are still able to get product in. And while the shipping is one approach, cargo is another. One of the upsides in a twisted sort of way of COVID is that airplane cargo has become far more available, and while it's hit a spike in price in the immediate early days of COVID, is now normalizing and settling in, because so many airlines don't have anybody. They have no butts in seats, so they're taking out the seats and filling it with cargo. And so our airport is still working. So again, if there's a will, there's a way. Look at what the likes of Noon and Namshi and Amazon and Wish and all of these guys are out on hunting sprees, saying, where are these unique mom and pop shops that can get digitized, and I can plug into my ecosystem, and I can take their product to the world. We need to be double clicking on this. If I'm an entrepreneur today in Lebanon, I wish I could do this. I around and pick up artisans of every color, shape, and size, because we've got stuff that's really interesting, and I'd package it and make it available for these types of marketplaces. This is one out of many things that we could do on the product side, on the food side, on the fashion side, many things. It's not easy, okay? We're not trying to be naive here. It's not easy, but it's got to happen, because if it doesn't happen, why are we having this call? Why are we doing this? Why are we here?
Ramiz, can I add just one thing to that? I got a call almost a month ago. A Lebanese guy who's been living in the US for the last probably 20 years, 25 years. And he's actually in the process of starting an office in the country, in Lebanon, with 12 people. I can't say the name, unfortunately. Lovely guy. To do some software design and AI stuff that I have no understanding of at all. And this is just a start, because the cost base of a guy who does, who's an engineer today, or a software developer or a designer today, and he's sitting all the way in the Midwest in the US, so it's a 10-hour difference, is for him on a cost-based structure, regardless, and this is one of the questions that I got as we were speaking, security, politics, and finance. Regardless of security, politics, and finance, regardless of these three, the guy is looking at 12 people, potentially 15 people, to sit at home and give him deliverables. And this is where the opportunity lies. Ramiz and you, David, referred to the port. The port is operational a week after the blast. So there is a port that's operational. But I'm not referring to port, I'm referring to the digitization of the world, which doesn't need physical movement of goods at many times. We still need that, but in many cases we don't. This is, there you go, on one opportunity of a guy that's actually live as we speak. Shreya.
So David, you wanted to say something? I saw you.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. So maybe I actually didn't express myself exactly the way that I thought I wanted to, but yeah, you're definitely right in the sense that I wanted to go down the other road. So I just want to express, for example, there are countries that are way worse than Lebanon that have investments that are operating. You have international, multinational corporates that are operating in there. You've got Procter & Gamble in Africa. You've got places like Indonesia, Philippines, Southeast Asia, where you have some countries that are, you know, in more dire straits than we were, let's say, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And, you know, these things, I mean, this is absent a judicial network that we were talking about earlier at the beginning of the call, where you don't have the kind of representation for a multinational corporate to be able to represent themselves and also to be able to hire and fire the way that they want to. I mean, if you look at, for example, Korea is considered to be, in many cases, a first world country. It's actually not. It's one of the hardest places to be able to hire a person and fire a person. If you look at, for example, Taiwan, there's a lot of impact like over there that you need to also take into consideration with regards to, you know, being able to, with regards to taxes and that kind of stuff. So I'm not disagreeing with any of this. In fact, I actually think that Lebanon is not as bad as people think it is. When you look at, for example, and it's very easy to look at the negatives and to think that it's impossible. We can't do it. In fact, if you look at, you know, some of these places, they're way worse than we were. And, you know, we've just had a rough time. We've had a massive explosion. We've got a political problem that we need to deal with. We've got a frozen banking system, which will be resolved. I mean, this is not something that will go on forever. It will be resolved. When all of this is resolved, it doesn't necessarily mean that Lebanon is absent from a solution. There's a lot of solutions. And digitizing the world economy and going down the infrastructure route with regards to, you know, opening up the port more towards being able to deliver stuff that, you know, these small mom and pop shops can deliver to, as Ramez mentioned, to Antibes. And if you want to be able to also deliver any kind of services to outside the region, it's a very simple process. However, you have to consider one thing that I think is something that has plagued the nation for many years, and it's already in a lot of people's minds, and you can see it from the people that are on this call, is that the same advertising message that you're giving to Lebanon, you're also giving to Dubai. And so it's hard for a lot of people to consider their own lives and think, are they ready to, like, you know, to endure all that stuff? Or are they ready to just have an easy life and just get it easier in Dubai, where they have everything delivered to them? I'm not an advocate of Dubai. I'm an advocate of Lebanon. However, I'm just telling you that this is the reality that we have. And the other problem that people also face is that the biggest marketplace right now in the Middle East is Saudi Arabia. And so Dubai has taken phenomenal steps to be able to market itself as the enabler for that marketplace. And so we're already at a disadvantage. So we need to figure out other ways for us to do that. And I totally agree with, you know, the digitization of the mom and pop shops. You know, we have so much potential that Dubai does not have. And we just need to figure out how to do that better.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Ramez, and thank you, Michelle. So just to sum up what we were trying to relay, the message that we want to get out of this specific topic regarding our opportunities is that Lebanon has a lot of natural enablers. These fall under the category of language, of top-notch academic institutions, very entrepreneurial people by nature, and we'd like to take credit for that. We want to take credit for being very entrepreneurial in the region. So these are our natural enablers, and also we have other factors that we can develop as a nation to help this transition from being reliant only on specific industries to having a more diverse set of economic factors. So it is there, the opportunity is there. There is a lot of space for us to operate in. And as Ramez and Michelle and also David pointed out, that these opportunities are not somewhere far in the future. These are immediate opportunities that we can act on, and we can actually enable Lebanon to grow and rebuild some sort of confidence in our own systems. So luckily, we still have around 14 minutes. And this is a topic that I really wanted to touch upon, and I'm so glad that we have the time to do that. The Beirut port, the explosion, the catastrophe. I think everyone in Lebanon, either abroad or home, has been touched by this explosion, either their families, their houses, their properties, someone close to them, everyone got touched. I know that, and unfortunately, it happened at the worst time during COVID. So a lot of our usually friends, international community, they're worried about their own response to COVID. They have their own problems. They have their plates full, and they are trying to have an economic policy or an economic push in order to revitalize their own economies. Michelle, I would like to start with you on how do you think we can start? I know it may be the $1 million question again, but how you think we can start rebuilding this port, given that a lot of our international friends do not trust our public sector, and given that our international friends as well have their hand full with their COVID response?
Hi, Michelle. Look, the Beirut port, this is my personal opinion. So
yeah, it's all
I agree on the score, but the Beirut port is not a huge problem by itself. The devastation around it is a major problem, yes, but a port by itself, as per my understanding from people I spoke to, is a very simple enterprise. It is a dock. The container shipment machinery is still there. It's a dock that you need to rebuild. and it is the storage facilities that you need to rebuild, which is steel hangars. It is not a massive undertaking, few $100 million. So in the big picture of things, it's not an issue. The more important issue about it is the political framework. What do we do with the port itself? What do you do with the EDL, Électricité du Liban? What do you do with the MIC1, MIC2, which is the telecom companies, or OGERO, which is the landline company? Government have always proven to be inefficient and corrupt by nature. I don't want to measure which is corrupt, more corrupt or not. That's not the framework of this topic. But any private sector enterprise, any privatization initiative, and this is an IMF suggestion, this is not my suggestion, an IMF program will require privatization of some government assets, especially the ones that actually produce cash flow, that are profitable, all right? Today, what would bring investors here? It's simple. In my mind, investors will follow returns. Okay, the higher the risk, the higher the return. If you give them the right level of return, they'll go anywhere in the world. And we've seen them go anywhere in the world. It's not, no one will say, you know what, I will not touch this. The question is, the answer is, I will not touch this at this price, right? So we have still inherent value in a lot of the things that the government owns, and we can do them better. And this is the private sector initiative. I hope some people on this call have the means and the capability and the access to look at these things. Of course, the politics have to get into a certain level of stability, which is not there yet, and I agree with David on this. But that can switch, actually, as we've seen in 2008, 2006, can shift quickly on the positive sense, if we may say.
Thank you, Michel. David, I saw you smiling there during Michel's response. I think you heavily agree, you strongly agree on the points that he was making.
No, I do agree. I actually think that, no, frankly, I do. I agree with almost everything you said. And, you know, the port is very, very important. To be honest, I attach a heavier importance to the port than he does. I don't know if $100 million or like a few $100 million is going to fix it. I don't like what I've seen in terms of like the devastation and stuff like that, you know, to the silos that control, for example, the wheat harvests and that kind of stuff. You know, I'm going to trust his judgment for it. Frankly, I'm so far removed being in Asia, and what I've seen, I'm a little bit more emotional about the whole thing than he is. And so I'm sure that he has a much more level head and he can actually give a much more balanced argument about that. What I saw total devastation. I saw $1 billion worth of damage. If it's a few $100 million, I'm happy, actually, because I think that the IMF would be more than happy to be able to repair that. The problem is that the strings that come attached with an IMF package, that's the thing that I'm actually more concerned about, because the IMF has never actually come with something that has been easy to swallow. And I look at, for example, the Greek example. Now, in terms of Greece, Greece has always had some structural issues that they've sort of, you know, lived with for several decades. Lebanon is no exception. In fact, Lebanon, you can say, is a Greece on steroids in many ways. But the problem is with Greece is that the entire economy was, well, a significant portion of the economy was supported by the government. In Lebanon, it's not. The Lebanese government was totally absent in many cases. In fact, they barely collected revenues. They barely were able to sustain themselves. They had a fiscal deficit that was stupendous, a trade balance that didn't make any sense. They had capital flows that were supporting the economy and supporting that balance. And it's really hard for me to understand exactly how the IMF can come in and propose a plan that's going to fix all this without really impacting the social fabric of Lebanon as it is. It's going to be a very hard pill to swallow, in my opinion.
David, just to add to that, by the way, what I was referring to, a few hundred million, it's actually the port itself, not the whole devastation around the port. The financial and the lives devastation from the blast is immeasurable and will be billions of dollars. But I was referring to the port itself.
I wasn't referring to the damage outside the port either.
Okay.
Because I looked at, for example, the silos, and I thought the silos were totally destroyed. I looked at, you know, I don't know, like, I didn't see, I only saw pictures, frankly, and, you know, I didn't see anything else. And so I'm happy that the damage wasn't as bad as you can tell from the pictures, or as you can think from the pictures. In fact, if it's actually that, if it's something that you can repair with a few $100s, and a few $100 million, and I think that's great.
In terms of the IMF program, an IMF program has one of the pillars of any IMF program is really the social network and protecting the most vulnerable in society. So in that aspect, I'm not, at least if the IMF is successful, usually what they come with is a plan and a social network to protect the most vulnerable in societies. It's not going to impact the whole spectrum of the society in the same level. So they come with programs to protect the most vulnerable. What we've done with subsidy today is really subsidize everyone, which is not the right way to do it. You subsidize everyone. And that's where I have my own personal opinion.
But in order for them to be able to be successful, they need to collect revenues, right?
Absolutely.
And so with a government that's been very unsuccessful in terms of collecting revenues, how are they going to be able to developing those channels of collecting revenues is going to be very difficult, especially in the sense of, you know, the cultural, it's a cultural thing, right? And I just refer to Greece because it's something that I'm personally familiar with. And so I know in Greece, they've had a significant problem trying to collect those revenues, and they were only able to do it after a significant amount of pain. Lebanon, I think in many ways is, like I said, is Greece on drugs in many ways. And so that's what I'm just referring to.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Michelle. Ramez, do you want to share any insights or any opinion that you might have on the Beirut port, the explosion? Anything that you would like to say regarding this topic, or to add on Michelle's and David's points?
Difficult to add anything. It's a very rich answer that they've already given, or a rich perspective. I'll just reference to my opening remark, which is, I think it's a private sector opportunity, as Michelle pointed out. And it'll improve quality, it'll create competition, it'll create jobs for qualified people that have nothing to do with sort of the quota-driven approach of the past that ultimately is disadvantageous to shareholders, right? So I'd love to see the private sector take a great asset and make it even greater.
Thank you, Ramez, and I echo what all three of you have said. Privatizing the port is actually one of the most, if you want, intelligent things that we can look at for a way forward. With that, I'm just conscious that we have only 3 minutes left. So I want to thank each and every one of you, Michelle, Ramez, and David. You have really made this call very rich and very insightful. And I hope everyone on the call also found it as insightful as I did. At least I hope they did. And I would like to end the call on this note. As a Lebanese population, or as a Lebanese person, we have this ability to, even during the hardest times, we find a way to push forward, to keep on pushing forward. And currently, what we are going through as a population, as a country, as a diaspora, is a very similar challenge. As Michel said, the public sector and the government are in total paralysis. There is political instability in the country. But as the message that should come out of this call is that there is opportunity as well. There is hope through the doom and gloom, as they say. We have the ability to stay focused on this shining light. And I hope that this call also motivates people to get in touch with Michel, get in touch with Ramez, get in touch with David and David Dawood, build this network, leverage Life's network, and please do feel free to reach out to me, Michel, David, and they would be very happy to engage with you, to discuss these topics and to see a way forward to leverage our current assets to create economical value, to drive commercial scale to our country. Again, this is not emotional, this is purely scientific, and also, as Ramez said, we are relying on economics and pure finance. We are not looking for politics or emotions. Thank you, Michel. Thank you, Ramez. Thank you, David. It's really been an honor having you guys. And thank you, everyone, for attending the call. If you have any additional questions, please do feel free to reach out to me. My email is michelshella@gmail.com. And if you want to reach out to any specific speaker, please also do reach out to me and I will guide your email forward to them. Have a good day, everyone, and thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.